Hello everyone, there you are. Good evening and welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Coming up on the show this evening, we'll be joined by George Galloway and he'll give us his no-holds-barred take on the state of politics in Britain at the moment. We'll also be talking about politics across the Atlantic as we discuss Joe Biden's attempts to jail his potential election opponent and ask also about the future for Julian Assange. And we'll learn all about the truly remarkable discovery of a 127 million year old side-necked turtle fossil on the Isle of Wight. All of that plus plenty of chat with my brilliant panellist Andrew Eborn, but first an update on the latest news from Ray Addison. Okay, joining me tonight is the broadcaster and lawyer and futurist Andrew Eborn. Andrew, what do you think of what I just said?
I think it's a fascinating vision of the future. And I think you're right. Humanity needs humanity. I was at the tech conference this week, the AI summit, where Rishi made his speech about how he wants to put UK at the front and centre of the new revolution, which is the technology revolution. And it was a combination of both the bleak and also the hopeful. Because PwC say that 300 million jobs are going to be lost to AI, but at the same time it's going to contribute about 15 trillion to the economy. And you're going to work out, well, what are people going to do with all this leisure time?
As where's robots, that 15 trillion going to go?
Well, exactly, and who's going to get it? You're absolutely right. Because what the fear is that the big technology companies will get stronger and richer and so on and so forth, and the poorer will just continue to get poorer. But there's a combination. They're talking about sort of railing it all in and making sure you have the safeguards in place. And it was Stephen Hawking who said it's our greatest human achievement, AI, but also potentially the biggest existential threat. And you need to combine those sort of thoughts with it to make that make sense. But you're right about the whole essence of humanity, because we have the ability now to live forever. You talked about being uploaded into the cloud, where you can get a digital resurrection of yourself. And in the last few days, they talked about the Beatles, John Lennon's voice being synthesised so they can get that the relevant song out now, have yet another Beatles release. The reality is that holograms will be replacing human beings for part of our entertainment. It's happening already. We've got ABBA not too far from here doing the ABBA-verse, and you can go along and watch that wonderful performance that they do.
But is there anything about that, what seems to be the proposed potential future, that has the capacity to make any actual human being happy? I mean, you talk about being alive virtually, as though you could be uploaded as a consciousness. Is that alive in any way that means anything?
Well, two things, dealing with your question about happiness, because obviously it's very subjective. I think what technology is going to do is to eliminate the mundane. So you're talking about getting rid of repetitive tasks and so on and so forth to make that more efficient, which will give humans more leisure time. The question is, what will they do with that leisure time? And entertainment itself is being revolutionised. Seismic changes in entertainment. You can now beam things into your brain. I know, it's scary stuff. You talk about I was down in Cannes, which I go regularly to launch new technology, and they have these 8K fantastic huge screens, 22.2 surround speakers. It is incredible. And I asked exactly that question, well, what next? And the next stage is they will beam things into your brain where you could effectively be shut off from the rest of the world, and you would live that particular moment.
I say leisure be damned in some ways. You know, the devil makes work for idle hands. Haven't we learned that much? This preoccupation with giving people empty time and nothing with which to fill it except video games and virtual reality.
No, you're absolutely right.
It's not life.
You need a purpose in life. And they do sort of turn around and say, look, people who retire at 60, they tend to die. Mortality rate goes through the roof if you don't have a purpose in life. So we need to make sure people continue to have a purpose.
Stay busy, that's what I say. After the break, George Galloway will be here to discuss the state of UK politics. So strap yourselves in for a lively ride. Do we still, would you say, at all breed the kind of people who used to be drawn to politics? People like yourself?
Wouldn't appear,
and if so, where are they now?
Wouldn't appear to be. I mean, I'm a working class man from a council house, mother and father factory workers, left school at 16, went to work in a factory. Nowadays, parliamentarians think Swarfiga is a Balearic island. They've never faced an angry gaffer. They've never heard the clatter of machinery. Indeed, machinery doesn't clatter much in our country now at all. We have cleansed the halls of Westminster of people like me, and not just people like me. Mr. Benn, for example, came from a very different social strata to me, but he was intellectually honest and rigorous, and we simply don't have that anymore. We don't even have colourful people anymore, let alone colourful people with a purpose. I mean, Boris Johnson had no purpose, really, but at least he had some colour. And now, as you say, he's writing columns for a national newspaper about the size of his gut, which I suppose kind of sums it all up.
George, bear with me while I also bring into this conversation Andrew Eborn, lawyer, who's with me in the studio. Andrew, surely it is the case that you and I both remember a time when there were politicians worthy of the name who, whether I agree with them or whether they made you furiously angry, they were truthful. Yeah. You know, you could tell that they were saying something that they thought, and they were prepared to say it and stand by it, even if it meant that their parliamentary colleagues might briefly disown them.
No, you're absolutely right. And they always say that trust comes in on foot and leaves on horseback. And I think the trust in politicians now is at an all-time low. And it was George Orwell, 1984, the past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became truth. And I think the more that you see these headlines about lies coming out and what do we do as a result of it, the bigger the problem is. And to be fair to Boris's column, it is interesting, it's not just about losing his gut, it's more about the political side. He was mentioning that side because he was saying the people around him, and he was quoting Shakespeare and Julius Caesar, he recognised that the people who might want to challenge him for the leadership were starting to lose weight. So they were taking this Ozempic, which sounds like somebody who used to go out with the cheeky girls. They were taking this to work on the basis that they would lose weight. And that's why he was quoting that side from Julius Caesar, say, let me surround myself by fat men because they don't have any ambition to take over. But that was the relevant sort of principle.
Welcome back. I would say that to watch US politics now is to feel as though I've walked through a doorway into a parallel universe where up is down and wrong is apparently right. I grew up and then lived most of my life believing the US was the land of the free. To be honest, I don't think that anymore. Sometimes I wonder if in this parallel universe, the White House is inhabited not by the good guys of the West Wing, but by a real-life version of the Corleone crime family, or perhaps just the Keystone Cops. Joining me now to contemplate what I describe as an American political world gone stark, staring bonkers, is Greg Swanson from Republicans Overseas UK. Greg, thanks for coming in. Is my cynicism in the face of what we seem to be seeing play out in the US overblown?
No, unfortunately, it's not, Neil. It's a real mess right now, and it's you know, there's been a lot of drama the last 8 years, but there's been particularly a lot of drama in the last 2, and it's not good for the country at all.
What are we to make of, first of all, I would say, Biden's administration's attempts to jail his strongest political opponent?
Yeah.
Whatever anyone thinks of Donald Trump.
Right. You can be a critic of President Trump. You can be an opponent of President Trump, and several of them have commented on this. You know, but at the same time, the weaponization of the justice system, the politicization of the whole apparatus in Washington is really troubling. And you should be really careful. And there is discretion. You don't have to prosecute these things. And so, you know, we have in New York and all over the country, but especially in New York, where you have Alvin Bragg indicting the president for a misdemeanor and making it a felony, whereas with real street criminals, where there's real violence and real problems, you know, reducing felony arrests to misdemeanor. So it's opposite world. It's really disturbing. And so this was a big mistake, I think. Perhaps it will backfire on the Democrats. It most likely helps Trump in the near term, but could hurt him in the long term.
I mean, can you see any way in which Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States of America, ends up in jail? Or does this actually just fast-track him to the White House?
It's definitely, in many ways, helping him in the nomination process. who knows what effect it will have on the general? Probably negative, because a lot of independents might be turned off by all the drama. But what's important is that, you know, the Democrats have gone ahead with this prosecution that they didn't have to do, and it's also brought up the really troubling, you know, narrative that there's a two-tier justice system, that the double standard is outrageous. After the Hillary email scandal, where they decided Comey said no reasonable prosecutor would file this case. You've got the Biden family cartel and also President Biden's document problems as well. So this really is showing a two-tiered system, and that's what's really troubling. So I don't think he'll go to jail, but then again, I didn't think they'd indict him either. So, you know, this is unprecedented.
Andrew, when you, like me, you know, we look on at that. You know, we're of a generation who we grew up watching America as the goodies, as the good guys. What do you feel when you watch the most?
I think it's extraordinary, but it's a very predictable course of action, isn't it? Because all that's going to happen is the support for Trump, because he's controlling the narrative, will galvanise. He said this is going to happen. He said the justice system is going to be weaponised. So, surprise, surprise, when it does get weaponised, all that's going to happen is his supporters will say, he predicted this, he is the Messiah, we're going to follow him. And this is going to be the problem. So I'm with you on this. I think it's an extraordinary state of affairs. But you raised the question about Joe Biden. Where is he at the moment, where he's coming from, and whether it's a joke that misfired. He talked about his little notes. He made a joke a couple of days ago on the same sort of basis. Talked about the notes that he did, but he's not going to release those, or he's going to make sure he hands them over. And it wasn't quite a joke. We weren't quite sure about it, and so on and so forth. And he had the fall. You know, they talk about Fall 24 and that cartoon they had, I think, in the Times last week, saying, "I didn't realise I had so many." But it was working on that sort of basis. I don't know if he's been deliberately portrayed in the media on this sort of basis, because you would think that the people behind him would try and protect him in a sort of way, so you don't have these opportunities to basically go wrong.
Yeah, I think they're very nervous, you know, and that's why they keep him away from press conferences. He does very little press. He doesn't answer questions, and anytime he's asked about his own family problems or the Biden cartel, he just ignores it and treats it as, you know, as some kind of offensive question. But and so they do a good job of keeping him from speaking to the press, from speaking off the teleprompter. He only works a 4-hour day. They put the powder on him, they get him all dolled up, give him some green drink in the morning, and he goes down to the office for 4 hours.
Do you think they'll really go the length of really going for the, you know, for the second term? And if not, then who? You know, obviously we've got Robert Kennedy Jr. now has emerged a very charismatic figure, to say the least. What do the Dems do?
There is no way they're going to run him in 2024. It's obscene. I know that's the story they're going with now. Perhaps he didn't want to be a, you know, so-called lame duck president and announce too early.
Right.
You know, the last one who did this was LBJ in 1968. He didn't announce that he wasn't running until March of '68. So maybe they wait another year, let Gavin Newsom in California or some other, you know, sort of candidate that's more realistic than RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson. Let someone else get ready. I mean, clearly Newsom is running. He's been dropping the hints, and I think you'll see him.
And to be fair, are the Republicans in any better? Are they in much better shape? Really? I mean, because the whole thing's beginning to look like a clown show.
Yeah, when you have too many people piling on, you've now got 8 or 9 candidates that have announced. That's not good, right? Because you need to consolidate ultimately around 1 or 2, and that's important. But it's early, and it's a great bench. You know, any number of those candidates would be good presidents. I would argue for Ron DeSantis, #1, of course. But, you know, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, these are all good people and good candidates. And I think that, so the Republicans have a much bigger bench. The Democrats really don't have a bench. I mean, you have 2 fringe candidates. You know, RFK Jr. seems like a good guy. He polls very well in terms of his favorables. People like him. But, you know, he is a fringe candidate. Right. He's polling at 20. Marianne Williamson, who's a fringier candidate, is polling at 10. So you have an incumbent president that's only polling at 70 in his own party. And 70% of Americans don't want him to run again. That's not a good sign. Anytime a president that's an incumbent polls below 90, he loses.
So isn't it better, then, to make that decision quickly?
Going to have to jump in. We're just running out of time.
Tactically, yes.
I would just say the Benn fire keeps raging at the moment.
Oh, yeah. It's not going away. And this might have been the last straw, this indictment. There'll be pushback from this.
Greg Swanson, again, thank you very much for your time.
Good to be here, Neil.
Coming up, we'll be joined by a paleontologist from Portsmouth University who's going to tell us about a truly remarkable find on the Isle of Wight. Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. And now, as we say, for something completely different. A 127 million year old fossil of something called a side-necked turtle. The first found to have lived in the United Kingdom has been discovered on the coast of the Isle of Wight. The fossil has been nicknamed Burby after fossil enthusiast Steve Burbridge, who found it at Brook Bay on the southwest coast. Paleontologist Megan Jacobs from the University of Portsmouth analysed the fossil and confirmed it to be the earliest of the side-necked turtles. She joins me now. Megan, are you there? This is this kind of...
I am, hello.
It's lovely to have you. I love stories like this. They just... When someone says 127 million years old, that my head opens like a flip-top bin and my brain comes out on a spring. But tell me, as a scientist, what is the significance of this find?
So, first of all, it's the first occurrence of this type of turtle in the UK. It's only ever found in Europe, and it's the oldest one as well. So it pushes back the age of this group of turtles. But what was even more cool is we actually micro-CT scanned this turtle. We could see some little bones sticking out the side, thinking, oh, they might belong to the turtle, they might not. We'll see what's in there. And we had it done initially at the hospital here on the island, and it didn't pick up anything. But we were thinking, well, maybe the slices are a bit too big. So we had it done professionally at Portsmouth, and it had every single bone inside.
Wow.
So it has all the backbones, the pelvis, the limbs, which is just extraordinary. And they're millimetres across. They're so tiny.
So it's like a mince pie, but with all the filling under the crust.
Yeah.
What is the closest living descendant of this side-necked turtle? Is there anything swimming in the modern seas that comes from this creature?
So these are they're a freshwater species, and we do have modern side-necked turtles alive today. So if you go somewhere nice and tropical in the States or even Asia, you find these side-necked turtles, and they're sort of somewhat related to this animal. We don't have direct descendants from this still alive.
Right,
but they're within the same group.
And for the audience, why are they called side-necked turtles? What is that descriptive of?
So these turtles. So people probably have this idea that a turtle can stick its head back into its shell when it's scared to avoid predators, whereas this one, it can't do that. What it does is it turns its head to the side, and the whole neck and head go sort of sideways into the shell, and it looks out with one eye, which is side neck. They're very, very strange. They're really long neck.
Andrew Eborn is with me in the studio.
Hi, Megan. How are you doing?
It's 127 million years old. It's very like a pebble that has come to light.
But what I love as well, Neil and Megan, is that they've also discovered a new dinosaur on the Isle of Wight. So it's obviously a rich source of all sorts of wonderful things at the moment. So quite incredible.
Megan, why is that? We do hear of a disproportionate amount of ancient things coming to light, first of all, on the Isle of Wight. Yes. Why? Yeah.
So I think we're lucky enough to have really, really fossiliferous rocks here on the island.
What a lovely word, fossiliferous.
Fossiliferous. So the Cretaceous rocks here on the island, right at the bottom of the island, are literally, they're full of dinosaurs, crocodiles, turtles, fish. And there's so much research going on now on all of these animals that it's all coming to light, and we're finding more and more every year. It's an exciting place to be if you're a paleontologist.
Yeah, so Andrew, Isle of Wight is a sort of Jurassic Park.
Oh, absolutely. And my father used to live in Lyme, Regis, along that Jurassic coast and things like that. And actually, one of the lodges that my mother had, he used to work at Boxgrove, and they found the shin of half a million.
Half a billion.
Yeah, it was about 500,000, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Years old.
Half a million, yeah.
Yeah, the shin, and basically the Boxgrove, it was called Roger after Roger Pedersen. So I love the thing about that coast. What I also love, Megan, is you must be discovering many more potential dinosaurs out there. This is, I think they were saying that the last one was 1865. Presumably then, if they keep digging, you're going to find lots more of these.
Is it just a treasure trove, Megan?
Yeah, new dinosaurs are coming out every year.
Hurrah!
People think dinosaurs are rare, but they're not here. There's skeletons coming out every day, bits of skeletons.
Oh, look, we've just lost the link to Megan, but I think Megan had told us what she came to say. I think that's a wonderful story, you know, to hear about something 127 million years old, and even to contemplate, I would say,
I love it.
What our part of the world was even like when that turtle was bobbing about in the shallows.
And I think you're right, and what I also love is how they might compare, get the different sciences to basically map out what life might have been like then. You can also have, if you can start extracting DNA, the whole idea of Jurassic Park no longer being fiction but a fact could be glorious.
So much more to learn. That's it for this week. Thanks to all my guests. I'll see you same time next Saturday. Thank you, Andrew, for being with me.
Pleasure to see you.
Next up, it's Calvin Robinson and the Common Sense Crusade. Bring it on.